All right. Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here with another episode of Ask Dr. Adriana. Today, I wanted to talk with you guys about your inner critic and how can you break up with your inner critic. So what is an inner critic? Well, it's that voice inside that's always putting you down, saying negative things to you. It might be like, oh, you couldn't ever do that, or don't even bother. That won't work out for you. It can be the little voice you hear in your head when you look in the mirror and you're like, ew, I look so ugly. I look so fat. I'm so this, I'm so that. It's basically a critical voice that many of us, if not most of us, have inside ourselves. And some people, I think, have the mistaken idea that your inner critic somehow will help you to get better and improve at things. But I don't find anything that's coming from that space of judgment, of making you wrong, to actually be all that helpful in creating your life. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this topic because it's such a big issue for so many of my clients that I work with and people that I know who have a lot of talents and gifts and abilities and have a desire to create something, great for themselves in the world, whether it be through a business, through their relationships, through whatever it is, their work they're doing in the world. But they get stuck with these critical voices and they often give up hope. It can create feelings of depression. It can create feelings of anxiety. It can create paralysis. Because you're actually giving your power over to this negativity and you're letting it actually create limitation in your life. So what I'm interested in is freeing people of that. And I have a book that's going to be coming out, hopefully sometime this year, where I really talk about this stuff. And what I'm looking at is, where do these voices, these beliefs that we have about ourselves, which I like to refer to as core false beliefs. In psychology, you'll often hear the term core beliefs or core limiting beliefs, but I've adopted this core false beliefs terminology from my friend TJ Woodward, who many of you may have seen me present with him before. We've collaborated on a number of projects together. And he, like me, shares this awareness that we actually come into the world born, and when we were born, we're perfect and whole. You don't look at a young child or a baby and go, ew, what's wrong with them? You don't think that way. You don't judge a young child who's full of joy and curiosity and just being very much in the spirit of love and light. We learn these judgments. We learn how to make ourselves wrong. We start getting messages from a very young age about how we're supposed to look, how we're supposed to act, what's okay, what to do, what's not okay to do. And we essentially, many of us, what we do is we internalize the critical voices of the people around us growing up. That could be your parents or family, could be older siblings, could be the teachers and peers at school. If you grew up in a religious tradition, it might be in that context, but, and you're constantly getting these messages, and then you're watching TV and movies, and now people are on social media, and you often will hear critical voices, either the way people are talking to you about you. I mean, you might be getting direct messages like, hey, you're stupid, or you're not going to be able to do that. You might get that more abusive kind of talk, or you might be observing other people saying it to themselves. Like, do you have a mother who looks in the mirror and goes, oh my God, I'm so fat? What does that teach you? What is that role model for you as a young child when you're a little sponge taking it all in, including taking on the energy of that? One, you might come to believe, oh, that's just the way people are. They look in the mirror and they think they're fat, so I'm going to do that too. Or you actually will absorb the energy of those critical judgments that your parents or whoever's around you are making of themselves or of others. So we learn this stuff. Okay, we're not born with it, we learn it. Judgment isn't even real, it's an invention. Doesn't exist in nature. Plants, animals, trees, they do not judge, only people do, and it's a learned behavior. And judgment, I'll say this over and over again, is the greatest source of human suffering. All that it does is it contracts the energy, it makes people stuck, it makes them feel bad about themselves, it creates shame, It creates low self-esteem, feelings of depression, feelings of anxiety, and really can lead to a lot of self-destructive behaviors, self-sabotage, drugs and alcohol, eating disorders, all these different ways that people are trying to cope with the pain of all of that negative energy, the shame really that gets created from having these kinds of core false beliefs, having an inner critic that's constantly, in your ear telling you you're not enough, telling you you're bad and wrong. And I see a lot of suffering every day getting created from that. So what's the way out? Well, first you have to realize that you're doing it. So pay attention, start noticing. This is the art of mindfulness, right? Starting to become aware of how you are talking to yourself, okay? Notice what happens when you look in the mirror. Notice, catch yourself when that negative voice comes in and says something like, you couldn't do that. You're not capable of that. All those other people can do it, but you can't. Like, you need to start recognizing when it's showing up. What are the triggers? What are the situations? Like, I work with a client who's has a lot of body dysmorphia. She has a lot of concern about how she looks. And so when she's in social situations, she gets this incredible anxiety about, oh my God, everyone's looking at me and they all think I look fat and this dress is awful and it doesn't fit me right and da-da-da. And she sometimes will turn to drugs and alcohol as a way to soothe that constant chatter. But that is a trigger for her. That is a situation in which she tends to have that critical voice get louder and louder. So that's one thing. The first step always, before you can change anything, you have to be aware that it's happening. So becoming aware, practicing mindfulness, meditation can be helpful here. And by meditation, I mean mindfulness meditation, where you're paying attention to your thoughts. You're paying attention to how those thoughts are making you feel. Start asking some questions. When I think this way, how does that make me feel? Does it feel good when I'm listening to that critical voice? What happens for me, right? What does it create? And then what if, you can also use the question to open up different possibilities. What if I were to see myself differently? What's another way to see this that I'm not recognizing? What's right about me that I'm not getting? I love that one. That's one of my favorites, because we're always so focused on what's wrong with me that when you ask the question, what's right about me, or what's right about this situation I'm in, it forces you to come out of that negative space and look at things from a different perspective. How would my best friend see this? Oftentimes other people, like our loved ones, see us in a different light than we see ourselves. So what would my best friend say here? How would they be seeing the situation? Would they be talking to me in this way? Sometimes externalizing your inner dialogue with your inner critic. We have an exercise in conscious recovery where we have people pair up and you write down some of the things that your critical voice tells you, and then you give it to your partner, and your partner says those things out loud to you. And it's pretty horrifying for people because, one, when you're the partner and you have to say these awful things to somebody, it's like, I would never say these things to someone, and yet I'll say them to myself. And sometimes when you hear out loud your own inner critic, the things you're saying to yourself, when you hear it coming back at you, it's such a powerful thing. Like, wow, I can't believe I'm talking to myself in this way. And the thing is, like I said, it's a learned habit. You can unlearn it. You can make that demand of yourself. I'm not going to keep talking to myself in this way anymore. I'm going to change the way I'm talking to myself. And you might start using some affirmations. You might start using those questions. What's right about me I'm not getting? What's something, instead of looking in the mirror and looking at all the things that are wrong and bad, ooh, I don't like this, this, or this. What's one thing you like when you look in the mirror? Oh, well, my hair looks okay today. Great. Start with that. In conscious recovery, we talk about practicing spiritual principles. And some of those spiritual principles include things like non-judgment, non-resistance, right? Instead of looking in the mirror like, I hate what I see, and I'm so pissed off about it, which is both judgments and resistance. Okay, well, what else could I choose here, right? What would it take for me to be more okay with my body? Which doesn't mean that you don't still exercise or look at what you're eating and maybe make some changes. I think some people have the fear that if I let go of my judgments, and I practice allowance, then I won't change anything. Then I'll just be lazy and sit on my ass all day and not do anything. And that's not true either. That's not been my experience. In fact, what I've seen more of the time is when people let go of the judgments, they free up the energy to actually be able to create something different. So it doesn't make logical sense, but in practice, letting go of your judgments, getting more okay, getting into acceptance or even allowance of what is what actually allows things to change, because you're freeing up the energy from being stuck in this judgmental, like concretized, as TJ likes to say, place. So that's one thing, is to really start asking questions and looking at how else could I see this. So spiritual principles, non-judgment, non-resistance, compassion, gratitude, kindness, caring. Like, how can we have more compassion for ourselves? Even when I don't like what I see when I look in the mirror, even if I don't like where my life is right now, can I have some compassion for myself? Maybe I'm doing the best I can right now. Or if it was something from the past, people love to sit there and fixate and ruminate over, oh, I should have, could have, would have done this. What if instead of that, you say, you know what, I did the best I could with where I was at. Maybe I wasn't as conscious then. Maybe I didn't have tools. I didn't realize. Now I'm changing. Now I'm working on myself in a different way. And I'm in process of making those changes. You know, in 12-step, they have this saying, progress, not perfection. Perfectionism is a trap. I'm going to be talking more about that in the future, but perfectionism is a trap. It's a judgment trap. You can't get out from it. And there is no such thing as perfection. What if you are actually whole and perfect just as you are, even with your imperfections, right? So starting to have more compassion, right? Gratitude is a really powerful tool. When you can have gratitude for yourself, you know, a lot of people keep gratitude lists. I'm grateful for this person, that thing, da, da, da. What if you include yourself in that equation and have gratitude for yourself as well? What are 3 things I can be grateful for about myself today? And they could be the simplest things. It could be, you know, if you're depressed, it might be that I got out of bed today and took a shower. It might be, hey, I feel good about myself that I didn't have road rage when I got in the car today. I was calm when I was driving. I was a good friend to someone today. I cleaned up around my house today. It can be the smallest things, but what can you acknowledge yourself for? Starting to practice that more positive way of acknowledging yourself and having gratitude for yourself and the things that you are, the things that you be, and the things that you do. That can be another really powerful tool. Of course, we also have many, many modalities, of which I practice a lot of. Everything from energy psychology, tapping, be set free fast, NET, neuro-emotional technique, access consciousness, and the clearing statement. We have so many ways that we can shift the energy around our core false beliefs that will allow us to actually go back to the place where that stuff got created, the roots and origins of it, and clear the energy around it. And there's lots of ways to learn these tools. You can take a class, you can have a session. There's a ton of free stuff on YouTube on all these different modalities. So you can learn to actually use tools to reshape the way you think. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also traditional psychology, gold standard treatment, also is looking at what are your automatic thoughts? What are those creating for you emotionally and behaviorally? And so if you want to change the way you feel and how you're acting, go to the root of it, which is your thinking. What's the distorted thinking you have? And then what's another way to change that thinking? We have so many different ways of working with this. We can even work with the trauma, because a lot of people's negative critical voice comes from trauma or abuse they may have experienced at some point in life. We can also heal that trauma so there no longer is like, well, you deserved it. You know, you're a bad person. Of course, that was going to happen to you. We can change that. I mean, anything is malleable. That's really the bottom line. If you're really wanting to change something, all the tools and technology is out there for you to do it. You just might need some guidance and some support around learning how to do that. So, and it's a process, right? One time of using the clearing statement or using your cue or doing like 10 minutes of tapping may not necessarily right away change a lifetime's worth of seeing yourself in a negative way. But each time you do use these tools, it peels off another layer. And if you keep working with them, you eventually get to this space where you start to recognize that none of this BS is true. And I'm actually all right with myself. And maybe I'm even a pretty good person. You can get to that place. So that was kind of like what I wanted to say. I wonder if we might have any questions or anyone commenting or wanting to know more. Okay, let me see here. Here is a question. How to deal with an inner critic that repeats constantly the external critics, like family? Well, right, that's your internalized inner critic. Part of it is that you've given perhaps those external people, places, whatever, things, belief systems, whatever it is. Let's say they're people in this case. You've given them power over you. Like you have valued. It's like you've put them on a pedestal and you value what they think and what they say. But I would ask a question like, what's the value of giving your power away? And where are those people functioning from? Right? Usually if people are criticizing you, it is because they already feel like crap about themselves and they are projecting their own stuff onto you. Or they're repeating a pattern, right? We see this in families all the time. Your mom is critical towards you because her mom was critical towards her. And her mom before her was critical towards her, right? So there's these patterns that go through the family, through the generations that just get repeated over and over again. So where are they functioning from? Usually a person who feels good about themselves, who's happy within themselves, doesn't have a need or a desire to put someone else down, right? I mean, when you feel good, you don't really feel like talking shit about someone else. It's just not really, the energies don't match. So if someone is being negative or critical, they have that somewhere in their own universe. And so if you can recognize where they're functioning from and maybe have some compassion or have some allowance for the fact that, hey, they're just doing what they learned or how they were treated, I don't have to take it personally. See, because probably what's going on is you are taking it personally and you're believing that what they're saying about you is true. When you start to connect with the truth of who and what you are as a perfect being that is whole and fundamentally unharmed and unharmable, as TJ would say, when you get a sense, if we were to use access consciousness language, of being an infinite being, then you would no longer be at the effect of other people's judgments because you know what's true for you. And it's irrelevant what other people, have you ever heard that expression, your judgments of me are none of my business? That's your stuff. It has nothing to do with me. If we stop personalizing what other people say and think, then we set ourselves free to be congruent with who we truly be. So that's what I would say there.
Adriana, I have a personal question.
Yes.
Like for me, like the inner critic comes up as like repeating voices, like not exactly like family stuff. And it's really hard to get present with it so I can like actually realize that it's an inner critic talking and not myself. So
Yeah.
what are the tools that I can use to get more present with that so I can like literally shift it?
Yeah. And you also bring up some other possibilities I want to talk about. I think the practice of mindfulness, right? I mean, it might be for a while, like for me, I used to sit in formal meditation. I would designate a time, turn off all the distractions and sit for 10 minutes, 20 minutes and just be present. Notice the different thoughts I was having. Notice the physical sensations I was having in my body. Notice what emotions were coming up so that I could learn how to be the observer. That's really what that type of meditation, Vipassana meditation, mindfulness meditation is all about, is how can I detach from my thoughts, feelings, and emotions and be the observer of them? Because if I can detach from them, if I'm not so caught up in them, if I'm not fully identified and merged with them, then I have the ability to use the tool and change them. So I think it might start there. You could also do a clearing, everything that doesn't allow me to be present with this, everything that doesn't allow me to perceive, know, be, and receive what's true here for me, destroy and uncreate that. You might use the access clearing statement, right? Something like that. The other thing you said, though, is that it's interesting is those, when you're hearing like a voice saying something to you, you can also pay attention to, is it saying you or is it saying I? because typically you don't talk to yourself in the second person. Okay. Usually you would say something like, oh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. If you're hearing in your head, you're so stupid, I can't believe you did that, I'd be asking some questions about who's saying that, right? Is that a parental voice? Is that someone, an abuser? Is that, somebody who has actually said those things to you? Is it an entity or a spirit of some sort that has no body, but is also in your ear talking to you? I've got a whole subspecialty, that I work with called Talk to the Entities, which is all about working with the spirit world. We can have the energies of entities, demons, and things that get in our ear and want us to do bad things to ourselves or others, or want us to feel bad about ourselves. That's their job. I've had situations where entities have shown up from other lifetimes and, who are pissed off, like you killed me or you hurt me in some other lifetime and I'm going to get you. And I have to do clearings around that. So it can definitely go as far out there as you're willing to go. But recognizing if it's an I or a you often will give you a clue as to what it is you're dealing with and where it's coming from. And we get programs, we get brainwashed with things. Things you hear, it can even be like what you heard in church growing up. There's a lot of dogma, there's a lot of philosophies, especially in the kind of spiritual religious realm, that also can be traumatizing. The very idea that you're born in sin is like, what does that do to people and their sense of self, right? So sometimes we have to, dig around to see where this stuff is coming from. But what I can tell you in 25 plus years of doing this work is that it's not you. You're not as fucked up as you think you are. You've come to believe that you are that way, and you can change how you see yourself and how you see the world. Anything else anyone has? All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. I hope you found this information useful. If you'd like to find out more about how you can change the way you are talking about yourself, how you can break up with your own inner critic, feel free to reach out. You can book a session with me. I have classes where I go into this material. I've got products on my website, adrianapopescu.org, and I talk about this topic a lot. So it'll be on my YouTube and SoundCloud as well, where there are bits and pieces of me talking about these different topics. But please do know you can change the way you feel about yourself. You don't have to be stuck in a prison of self-hatred, shame, toxic shame like that. If that's not working for you anymore and you want to change it, there are ways to do it. Please know that. So Dr. Adriana signing off for now. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I'll see you guys next time.